Good evening and welcome. We're going to call the regular board meeting for the Akron Public Schools Board of Education for August 13th, 2018 to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Alexander.
Present.
Mrs. Baylor.
Yes.
Mr. Brockman.
Here.
Present.
Mrs. Lasher.
Here.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Reverend Walker.
Present. Joining us for the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, if everyone could please rise as we present the colors for from our NJROTC candidates.
Colors. Ready. Cut. Forward. March. Colors. Hold. Present. Colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry. Colors. Ready. Cut. Oath. Forward. March. Colors. Hold. Present. Arms. Post the colors. Ready. 2. Court. Arms. Up. Out. Face. Forward. Arch. Colors. Hold. Order. Arms. Right. Face. Eddie.
Good evening. My name is Colonel Lionel Urquhart. I am taking over as a senior naval science instructor at Elliott High School. I'm going to be working with First Class Petty Officer Joseph Greco this year, so I'm excited about it. I'm going to turn this over to cadets to introduce themselves. Thank you for having us.
Hello, I'm Cadet Angel Kipker. I am a seaman recruit, and I am a sophomore at Elliott High School.
I'm Cadet Angel Harris. I'm a lieutenant, the executive officer of the program, and this will be my 4th year and my 2nd year at Elliott.
I'm Cadet Isaiah Kithcard. This is my 2nd year. I'm a sophomore and I'm a senior apprentice.
I'm Cadet Alden Claxton. I'm a sophomore at Elliott High School, and I'm a senior.
Okay. Thank you for being here.
Left. Face. Forward. Arch.
Thank you. Everyone can be seated. Always a pleasure to see our cadets, and we thank them for their community service and for being such outstanding representatives for Akron Public Schools. So thank you for helping us with the Pledge of Allegiance over the summer. Next is our community and school reflections. Would anyone like to start?
Well, I'll start. I had the opportunity last weekend, to attend an honoring ceremony for the Honorable James R. Williams, who's retired judge in our community, who was a former city council member, prosecutor on, I think, the district area federal court. And for me, it has a lot of personal significance, because had it not been for Judge Williams and Reverend Ron Fowler, I would not have even been on the board. They encouraged me to run a few years ago to be on the board, and I thank them for their support, and especially Judge Williams, who was also a member of the congregation I pastored, for their continued leadership in our community and their support.
I can go next. I just first wanted to say thanks to Mark Williamson. I thought I saw him put his head in, but the coverage of the Akron School has been amazing and continuing maybe longer than many of us thought. And I just wanted to say thanks to him and, I mean, our entire senior leadership team has been working so hard on making sure that this really, really succeeds for the kids. I also got to go to the Love Akron Connects breakfast, and our own Mr. James and Coach Kemp Boyd spoke to the group about the benefits of sports and other extracurricular activities for the students' success kind of in and out of the classroom. And last Saturday went to a meeting with the Colony of Women. They met at the Akron Summit County Public Library over in our Bookville cluster to talk about safety measures inside the city and inside our school district. It was awesome. There were representatives from juvenile court, our own Akron Board of Education Police, Sheriff's Office, Akron Police Office. It was just awesome, and a lot of information I think was shared, and lots of folks left that meeting thinking like, wow, there are lots of things in place, but we're not especially good at communicating them all together, understanding what they all mean and how the puzzle pieces connect. So really good start, and I'm encouraged by that group. And also just thank you to everyone for the IPS grand opening. That was absolutely amazing, and anyone involved in that deserves lots and lots of praise and rest.
Thank you.
In addition to IPS, which just can't be said, so we'll just say it one more time. I got to attend the Downtown Akron Kiwanis. They talked about the program that's beginning at Jennings this year, and had some of the staff there to talk about their leadership group that they're putting together. I can't think of the names of the life right now, but they're just a wonderful group of people who really want to be involved in encouraging leadership. They brought the folks from Talmadge High School who have had that for a couple of years, or middle school that have had that for quite a few years, and they were encouraging each other as staff. So that was wonderful, and that's about it. Love Akron was wonderful too, and always hearing Kemp speak is a pleasure, and Mr. James.
Just a couple things. We were all at the IPS, I Promise School grand opening, and it was a great event. You know, everybody's knocking on wood, great weather. Sort of knocking on wood. The other thing I went to was the big bowl ball for United Way. It's in the trolley barn, and thank goodness it didn't rain because it's an old building and the roof shows it. But that was a great event. United Way is a great partner of ours. It did spark a little bit of conversation at our table anyways about maybe what Akron Public Schools could do somewhere along those lines as we approach our 175th anniversary. Something like that for a fundraiser for us.
I attended a couple of the same events, but one thing I wanted to say today, because I was at a number of churches who were giving out like book bags and school supplies for our children, I just want to say thank you to all the community people out there that care and love on our children through their giving. And it's just been amazing. Almost every church in the entire city is like, they have a day where they're giving out book bags and school supplies, and our organizations as well. So I just wanted to say thank you to all those who help us and help support our children throughout the year.
Because I don't have much of a report tonight, I'm going to move mine up to community and school reflections and just say, since our next board meeting will be after we officially go back to school, just want to say welcome back to everyone. Really excited about this year. In the time that I've been on the board, it's been a really exciting last year or two just with launching college and career academies in the I Promise School, and so many other partnerships that are coming out of college and career academies, and so many other wonderful things have taken place, that it's really exciting to start a new school year. So I'm really looking forward to it. And just, again, welcome back to all of the staff. Hope you got to enjoy at least some of the summer. And thank you for all the work that you did over the summer to get ready to go back this week or next week. I also attended the I Promise School opening and the United Way Bold Futures Ball, so I won't say much about that. We also have the KCLC grand opening this weekend, so that's exciting. We have and I think Tim's going to talk about it, sort of a decommissioning ceremony for a piece of art at one of our schools that's kind of seen its best days. And so just lots going on. Really excited though, and so just again want to say welcome back and lots to look forward to. So with that, we have no request to address the board. We do have a recognition tonight, and I'm just going to say briefly that this is something that Reverend Walker approached the board about, honoring in a meaningful way our fourth grade student that we lost, Anthony Tony Swain. And so I'm going to turn it over to him, to Reverend Walker, and let him explain a little bit about what we're going to do. And Reverend Walker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to ask that if the Swain family would stand, come forward at this time. Mrs. Swain and her two daughters. I'm going to ask the staff would also come and accompany them as well. This resolution comes out of an annual recognition where the Akron Police Department and others gather at the corner where Anthony Tony Swain was killed in the act of saving his sister, who's present with us today. The incident occurred where someone who was actually being stopped by the crossing guard but refused to do so. And in the process, hit and killed Anthony Tony Swain. His sister, eldest sister, when we gathered at that corner, reflected upon a text that she had received from a former student of Anthony Tony Swain, who said that she was encouraged by his love of reading. And she, because of that, also loved reading. And I thought it would be a wonderful testament for the board, for Akron Public Schools, to honor Anthony Tony Swain by recognizing him and naming the Resource Center in his honor, since it had touched one of his fellow students who was willing to share in a text with his elder sister that because of him, she has a desire to love to read. And because of his heroic acts, his sister stands here today, Charlique, as a sophomore at Youngstown State and is studying nursing. So on behalf of the board, the resolution authorizing the naming of Glover CLC Learning Resource Center in honor of Anthony Tony Swain. Whereas Akron Public Schools Glover Elementary School student Anthony Tony Swain was an outstanding student who demonstrated the love of learning, appreciation of his fellow students, and love of family. And whereas due to a car accident, Tony gave his life to save his sister, Charlique, as they walked to school on September 6, 2005. And whereas the current Glover Community Learning Center staff and community have continued their efforts to honor Tony's sacrifice by supporting change to the City of Akron Code regarding the authority of school crossing guards to implicate motorists who ignore their commands and endanger children. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of the Akron City School District, Section 1, that board members wish to recognize former Akron Public Schools student Anthony Tony Swain for his special contribution to Glover Elementary School during his attendance through September 6, 2005. Section 2, that board members approve of the naming of the Glover CLC Learning Resource Center, the Tony Swain Learning Resource Center. Section 3, that a copy of this resolution be made a part of the permanent record of the Akron Board of Education, and that a copy be presented to the Swain family. And all of the board members and the superintendent affix their name to this resolution done August 13, 2018. if one of the members, if the mother will want to say something, and she sort of hesitated, but I know elder sister might want to say a word, and if that's okay, Mr. President.
Yes, okay. Hello, my name is Armisha Sharpshire. Since today happened, I've been the one, talking and hosting and everything. 'Cause my mom still hasn't been to the site yet. She probably never will. So when it's Candlelight's birthday, hang the balloons, I do it. And I'm the one who put the article in the paper for everybody to contact me if they knew anything. That was me. And I'm just happy that my brother, he's a living legacy. And sad to say that his death, is the reason, but I'm sure if he was here today, it'd be greater than what he is now. And I'm all about to cry, I'm emotional, sorry. But I appreciate that his name is still going and the respect that he has in us. My mother, she appreciates it too, even though she's not talking, and we have great parents. And my mom always, to this day, look out for each other and protect each other, and that's what happened. And this is why Charlie is still standing here today. So he's our hero, and everybody else is, and we love him and we miss him. And hopefully one day, whether it's 20, 30 years, somebody will say something. We still have hope, and I'm still looking and digging, that's what I do. But I'm just glad, he was my brother. And I miss him, and I wish he was here to kick my butt in video games like he used to all the time. He would beat me and just challenge me all the time. And there was a student from Glover, she inboxed me after last candlelight I had, and she was like, hey, I'm Tony's friend from school. Like, I never wanted to do accelerated reader, but he kept getting 100-book challenges. He kept winning all the time and the medals, and she was like, he encouraged me to do it. And she was like, she felt really good about her reading 100 books. And I shared that after candlelight, and I read her message. And Mr. Walker, I didn't even know what he was doing until I got a phone call, and he said that. And I told my mother, and we was texting, and she sent the crying emoji. So we're very grateful for him to take that step to do something like this. It means a lot, because he didn't have to, So I appreciate being here today, and the love my brother has, and the new laws about the crossing, because I'm going slower than I'm supposed to be, and and I'm really big on it. If I'm with anybody, slow down. You're driving too fast. I'm always watching. That's just who I am. And some people don't understand why I snap, but it's because my brother, and we have to save lives if we can. That's all I got to say. I'll talk forever. But thank you.
Want to take that, or thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
To make it official, I would ask for a motion from the board for the naming of the Learning Resource Center at Glover CLC.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next on our agenda, we have approval of the meeting minutes, the regular meeting minutes for July 23rd, 2018, and the joint Akron Public Schools City Council meeting minutes for July 19th, 2018. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or discussion on the meeting minutes? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Superintendent's recommendation.
Mr. President, I have before me for your consideration 69 personnel recommendations.
and the personnel recommendation supplement, which is the reappointment list for administrative staff for the 2018-19 school year. And before I move for their approval, I'd like Kathy McVeigh to introduce a few people who are with us this evening.
First this evening, I'd like to tell you about Cynthia Rochford, who could not be here tonight. Just briefly, she graduated from Copley Fairlawn High School and then went to Bowling Green State University, where she got her Bachelor of Science degree in Education with a major in elementary education, and then graduated from the University of Akron with a Master's of Science degree in Education. She became employed by Akron Schools in 1997 as a tutor, and then was hired as a full-time teacher where she taught at Glover Elementary for the next 16 years. During that time, she served on the school improvement team, and one of her principals wrote in her evaluation, she's dedicated to the profession and is an asset to Glover Schools. She was selected to be an intervention coach in 2015, and tonight she's being recommended for a Dean of Students, who she will be assigned to CASE CLC. Okay, next up, Denise Bahari, if you could stand, please. After graduating from Brickman High School, Denise entered Ohio Northern University on an academic scholarship. She graduated with high distinction in 1984 with a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration and attended Cleveland State University, where she majored in elementary ed. She continued her education at Defiance College, where she graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in elementary education and then received her Master's of Science degree in elementary education from the University of Akron. Her teaching career began in 1999 as a career prep teacher, where she worked in that assignment for 7 years. In August of 2006, Denise switched gears to become a math teacher, and she taught math at Goodyear and Ennis Middle Schools until 2013. In 2013, she was selected to be a consulting teacher, where she helped to mentor our new teachers hired into the district and did that through June of 2017. For 17-18, she was an aspiring Principal Academy intern at Litchfield CLC, and then was selected to become an interim dean for the 2018-19 school year. But based on some recent changes, we are requesting that she be moved up to a Dean of Students tonight, where she will be assigned to hire.
Thank you very much. I thank you. I thank senior staff, the Board of Education. I'm really, really looking forward to being part of Higher CLC and being part of the other community. So thank you so much.
Jeffrey Lysick. Mr. Lysick graduated from Coventry High School and set his sights on a career in education. He graduated from Kent State University in 2008 with a Bachelor of Science in Education with a major in integrated math. He received his Master's of Science degree in administration following that. Prior to joining Akron Public Schools, he worked in the landscaping business and also worked at a local food market. In 2009, he was hired by the Akron Public Schools to teach math. His first assignment was at North High School. He later moved to Litchfield Middle School, where he taught math for the next 5 years. He left the classroom in 2015 to become the interim Dean of Students at Litchfield, and 1 year later became the Dean of Students there. In 2017, he became the Dean of Students at CASE at Resnick CLC. Tonight, he's being recommended now for the Assistant Principal position at the I Promise School and the Dean of Students position at Resnick, where he will be split between the two schools. So congratulations.
I thank everybody for coming out to the I Promise opening. It was an amazing event. Hard to believe we've been in school for a month already. It's an awesome thing that the board's doing, coming together with the foundation and the support and love for those kids. Come down and see what's going on in that building and see those kids during the day. Just the amount of love and support they have from district and the foundation and all our community partners is something to see. There's a definite buzz of excitement. I'm just proud to be part of it, and thank everybody for letting me be part of that.
Brian Turner. Mr. Turner is a proud graduate of our own Bookdale High School. He then attended Central State University, where he earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Education, and then to the University of Akron, where he graduated in 1991 with a Master of Science degree in Education. After receiving an honorable discharge from the United States Marine Corps Reserves in 1987, he worked in a variety of organizations that serve the youth of our community. He worked at Summit County Juvenile Court as a group counselor in the Juvenile Detention Center, and he was also a program director for the Youth Outreach Center at East Akron Community House. He also worked at Akron Metropolitan, YMCA, and the City Center Athletic Club, where he served as an executive director for each organization. In 2007, he became affiliated with the Akron Public Schools through a partnership through Project Grad of Akron. He later officially joined Akron Public Schools in 2010 when he became a marketing teacher at Garfield High School. And in 2012, he became the behavior and climate coach at Bookville High School. He later moved to the Dean of Student position in 2015 at Bookville and remained there through 2017-18. Tonight, we are recommending him for an academy principal position at Bookville for this 18-19 school year. Congratulations.
Once again, I'd like to thank the selection committee for choosing me for the academy principal. I'd also like to thank Mr. Lawson. I know he didn't want me to do it. He was my marketing education teacher when I was in high school. And thank you, Mr. Lawson. But it's because of Mr. Lawson that I came back to Akron Public School, because I was certified in 1986 to teach health education biology. But the YMCA kind of opened up like 17 years later. I said, wow, I need to get back over into education. So thank you, Mr. Lawson, and thank the board and committee for selecting me. Okay.
All right, Christine Sims. Christine Sims is a graduate of Ellet High School and then attended the University of Akron, where she earned a Bachelor of Science degree in education, and later attended Kent State University, where she received her master's in education with a major in reading specialization. She joined Akron Public Schools in 1994 as a substitute teacher, and the next year was hired full-time as a teacher, where she worked at Lincoln Elementary School. She left Akron Schools to work for the American Reading Company, which was working with Akron Schools with a reading program, and after 7 years, she returned to teaching at Copley Fairlawn City Schools. 2 years later, in 2014, she returned to her teaching roots when she was hired back by Akron Public Schools as an instructional specialist in school improvement. Tonight, she's being recommended for the coordinator position in school improvement. Congratulations.
I want to thank the board for this opportunity, as well as senior staff, Mr. Harrington as their director in our department. I'm really excited to continue working in an office of school improvement to support the middle schools and high schools.
And with that, Mr. President, these recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the personnel recommendations. Any comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes, abstain from item number 19.
Thank you. Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Next, Mr. President, I have before me for your consideration 1 motion and 11 resolutions on the consent agenda and 1 resolution on the board letter supplement. And at this time, I'd like Tamiko Hatcher to explain the information that's contained in the board letter supplement and the resolution.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm trying to get the computer logged in. I do apologize for not having it done already, but for the sake of everyone's time, I have provided the documents with you in front of you. Everyone at the board, and there's some additional copies around. I'll go ahead and get started, so then that way, for the sake of time, so we have an opportunity to move forward. Back in the spring of 2017, Mr. James was approached by the Cleveland Cavaliers as well as Goodyear to really look for ways in which we would be able to accept about $500,000. Both Akron Public Schools and Cleveland Municipal School District were both approached because they had secured funds to further STEM education. Mr. James at that particular time turned to some of the work that we had already been doing and our specialty schools, very specifically STEM middle school and STEM high school, and then also looking for unique ways in which we could infuse the work from college and career academies to move this particular program forward. So as we do with any other proposal from an outside vendor, we looked at our district focus. And in looking at our district focus, we found that it actually followed what we do in 2 areas. One was to improve teaching and learning across the district, and the other way was district focus area 3 for public engagement. So after taking both of those areas into consideration, we had already had 2 initiatives that really fell into this category. The first initiative was spreading STEM ideology, which is really built on making learning relevant to kids through the use of problems and solving projects throughout the community. And the other way was to look at how we could infuse the soft skills that we talked about through the work with college and career academies. So that is how this entire partnership came to life. So the way we went about doing that was to look at 3 different elements. The first one was using our best practices that we learned from STEM middle school and STEM high school. We said if it's good for the students there and we're seeing remarkable gains, how could we use any type of in-kind donation to spread that across all schools within the district? So we set our focus on the middle school area and said, okay, if it worked for STEM middle, they've been vetted, how could we use this particular opportunity to ensure that every single middle school had those opportunities? So we looked to purchase many of those similar items across all middle schools. We realized that the money wasn't enough to really impact every single classroom in the middle schools, so we looked for a home where all of this could reside. And that is where we looked at our student learning centers, or our libraries for lack of a better word. We looked there to house all of these particular items. So in doing so, there's a term that we use in science called a makerspace. So the makerspace is this creative element where students will have an opportunity to learn through trial and error, to learn to work with materials that are 21st century, to really push the design. When I tell people outside of Akron Public Schools, I remember as a kid what I wanted for Christmas was Legos. But Legos was very expensive. It was a very expensive toy at that particular time. So what I remember my mom purchasing me was a box of blocks, because it really was about me creating something that was 3-dimensional that I didn't have the resource for, but there were some potential problems. If you have a younger brother, they don't quite hold the same way that the interlocking mechanisms of a Lego, right? So all of those creations went on the floor. And I really believe that for me, that really is what piqued my interest in, thank you, that is really what piqued my interest in engineering and math. So what we want to make sure we do to follow what Mr. James' charge was, is to make sure the students here at Akron Public Schools had an opportunity to have in their hands the latest and greatest resources and opportunities to really peak innovation, to have an opportunity to create things that don't currently exist, and to dream, and to also provoke their particular career pathways. What was the second one? The second area that we looked at was, how do we create an exemplar space? A space that students would be encouraged to collaborate, a space that really they could call home. Those of you who have the dining room table at your house where everyone kind of meets, the goal was to create that in our CLCs, or in our student learning centers, as an opportunity where everyone can kind of come together and see where new thinking and new innovation can actually take place. So we wanted to create an exemplar. So what we did was we piggybacked on the information that we had seen at Boca, which was a new tech school. Very similar to STEM, different approach, but the goal is to make learning relevant to students. And we felt that by equipping this particular, or transforming this space, that it would really bode well to encourage students to dream and to imagine and to create. And then the last and final area, which really looks at the scaffolding. So if we introduce this type of learn by play at our middle schools, then the next phase is to how, once students begin to develop a certain level of comfort with creative design and innovation, how could we bring those creativity to full scale? So the next area is when we look at is a term that we use in STEM education called a Fab Lab. And what that will allow students to do is take a concept and then bring it to full scale. And that is what you will see in that particular lab, is a place where students would have an opportunity to build things at full scale. So picture the middle school, micro-sized opportunities to peak innovation, 3D printers. If you go to the next slide, please. What you will see in a makerspace is vinyl printing, 3D printing, video production, creativity, the ability to edit some of the items that they would create. So whether it's creating your own song, creating a movie, sound bites, clips, 3D Lego construction, which is, I gave you guys my example, to move from just stacking it to also having motors and levies and being levers, and also being able to program items that they would build out of Legos. So much different than what you would find in your normal toy store. And then the other part of it is how do we teach kids how to communicate with computers? We use various words or terms to talk about that, whether it's coding or computer-aided design, or in some cases moving towards automated cars, which allows sensors to be programmed so that the cars can learn to maneuver. So that is when we start looking at some of the items that we hear about today, whether it's a drone being able to deliver a package from Amazon, or an Uber car and some of the test pilots that can pick you up and deliver items, or even us as packages, to another location. Fab Lab is when you're getting to those larger full scale, like I mentioned to you, and those are the many of the items that students would be able to earn certification, whether we're looking at through college and career academies, and opportunities for staff members to prepare students or equip them with those skill sets. So with all that, where are we at today? We, as I mentioned to you, in 2017, Mr. James was approached by the Cavs as well as Goodyear, and we developed a plan that I mentioned to you. So where are we today? Currently, there's been $100,000 allocated for us to dream. So what we do with those dreams is then turn those in, and I'll use another example of Christmas as me as a kid. We had that JCPenney catalog, and I think I circled everything in there, thinking that it was going to show up underneath my Christmas tree. Didn't quite happen that way, all of the items, but that is in essence what we get to do on a full scale, as long as it falls in line with what we believe we want for our students here at Akron Public Schools. So what I and a team of others are able to do is identify those essential items that we want across all middle schools. So in year one, it's really equated to right around a $75,000 purchase of items across all middle schools. And then we also began the renovation project at Bookville, just the middle school side. And we'll show you some pictures of what it looks like in demo. But the unveiling we're looking to schedule. So we're looking at the first part of next month, but there's some other pieces to that and some timelines to make sure that we do an unveiling, and that's kind of classified information, if you will. So that way that we don't steal the thunder of the Cavs and the students there at Bookville. But the second part of it is, and where you see we're kind of crossover in fiscal years, so we now have at our disposal the remaining portion of that plan. So we got about $200,000 that will be spent between last year and this upcoming year. And for that phase, we're going to complete the high school side of Bookville. So that would mean that the entire Learning Resource Center will be complete. The goal is to have it complete by the end of this school year, or by the end of this summer. And then we move into our next phase, is that we'll take another look and see if there's any other curricular needs from teaching and learning. And then we'll begin the Fab Lab endeavor, identifying a space and location for it, and then equipping it with those full-scale machinery that makes it a Fab Lab. So as we move forward, a couple of areas that are currently being renovated with the help of Deborah Folk's team, as well as the Cavs organization. And keep in mind, they handle full-fledged construction. Not one dime comes from our taxpayers here, nor from our budget. So it's a phenomenal endeavor, and I go back to that analogy. We order, we tell them what we need, they bring in people that give us an estimate, and they complete it. It's pretty interesting in terms of how that process works. So we're able to dream this area. You see in the back where they have Innovation Station. Bookville was key to us because the staff in our library did a phenomenal job of really taking on the challenges set forth by Megan Mannion. She coordinates all of this particular space, but we had a team of staff members at Bookville who really took on this charge and started creating space for students, and we really were able to quantify the use of students in this area. So what we're doing is enhancing it with the resources that the Cavs and Goodyear was able to provide. That's where the future site of many of those areas. Those of you who have been in Bookville on the middle school side, this is looking through that back area. There's some cool things that's going to happen to not only demonstrate our partnership, but also create collaborative areas for students to be able to think outside the box, so to speak, and to create or to make their dreams become reality. As we look to our getting ready for college and career, it is important for us to know that it doesn't just end with them providing us with treasure. The ultimate goal is to see if there's an opportunity for Rachel Teka and her formal processes to pull in either the Cavs. Goodyear is already a key partner with us. They've had a long time partnership with us. But Quickens Loan Arena as well is a multifaceted, multi-level for marketing, purchasing, logistics, hospitality, all those areas that could really fit well into our College and Career Academy framework. So those conversations are budding at this point, but wanted to let you guys know that that area is something that really bodes well to both organizations. So we're hoping that at some point, as we continue this project, that those opportunities will be opportunities for our students. Hopefully I gave you guys a large or at least an overview of the items in this particular project. So, any questions? Yes, sir.
I guess the only question that popped up in that FAB portion, because we've heard a lot of things happening with those 3D printers. Not positive things, but negative things, like weapons or weapon parts. How would we restrict or make sure that nothing like that, happens in our environment?
If you go back to our 3D printer, some schools choose to leave them open access and students only pay for the materials. But in our way, a student could create their own program for the printer and use our materials to produce those items. But what we have done is created those safeguards to make sure that everything that is printed goes through an adult, so they don't have just open access to be able to use our items to, in this case, to do something in a very negative way. So they do have the capability of creating and printing anything that you would see, whether out of metal or out of plastic, depending on whatever the materials, and even out of wood. So they're very robust. But our safeguards is to ensure that students don't always have direct access because of the environment that we sit in, and that would also have to be approved by an adult. Yes.
First of all, I love your real life examples. Thank you very much for bringing those all in. We did get a chance to preview this in instructional policy, so I've been excited for the rest of the board to see that this is coming for a couple of weeks now. Just wanted to make a comment to tell you what a great job I thought you did of explaining something that I think that we've probably all been explaining a little bit of in the last few weeks, is how I Promise and how STEM, how that helps the rest of the district. And what you really have laid out here is how we're taking that incubation, to borrow the term Mr. Miller gave me when I was stuck that one meeting, the incubation of showing our partners, showing the public, showing students that things will work and that we can do them and we can do them well. And if you give our students a chance, that they can really thrive. So, and then it's just a matter of finding that help, finding that funding, or justifying cost, right? So what we've been able to do is take what was incubated in STEM, and now it's going to all of our middle schools, and particularly to the new tech model at Buckdale. So hopefully this helps people to understand, because it's been a struggle explaining on social media. Even today, I was trying to explain, how does this benefit the district? Well, it benefits the whole district, not just these kids. And it's wonderful that it benefits those kids, but it benefits all. So thank you for that. It's a stellar explanation.
So, thank you guys.
Just another wonderful nugget for APS.
And with that, Mr. President, these recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the consent agenda items. Any comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, roll call please.
Reverend Walker.
Yes.
Mr. Alexander.
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor.
Yes.
Mr. Bravo. Mrs. Lasher.
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield.
Yes.
Mr. Miller.
Yes.
And finally, Mr. President, I have before me for your consideration 32 business affairs recommendations. These recommendations are in proper form, and I move their approval.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the business affairs recommendations. Any comments, questions, or discussion?
Hearing none, roll call, please. Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to do it again. Mr. President, under my report, there's a meeting of the State Superintendent's Graduation Requirements Committee on Wednesday that I'll be attending. I think the group is coming to some final recommendations on how to move forward with graduation requirements. I don't know what the status of those will be with the legislature, but I'll give a report once I come back from there to see if we have some final recommendations that can be moved forward. Tomorrow I'll be in Newark, Ohio, where the superintendent is taking over as president of BASA. Yay. So I will be past president. Still have some duties though, but that's fine. Great organization. I also just wanted to report that I had meetings with both the Salvation Army and Boys and Girls Club last week. Interest in working with us on some things around our COC. So we'll further that conversation. I'll bring that information back at the proper time.
Thank you. I have no report other than I was pulling up my notes earlier because I did want to just point out and, always give a kudos to our staff. I know that we never leave a rock unturned when we're looking for money for early childhood. And so, as you see, we have $1.62 million that we're accepting tonight, or that we accepted tonight under the consent agenda. And then again, 9 schools participating in the Fresh Fruits and Vegetables program. So thank you, Deb, and the food service staff for that, child nutrition staff for that. All right, treasurer's report.
No report.
Committee reports, legal contracts, and board policy.
All right, we are doing another first reading for our crowdfunding policy 6605. So this is now officially the first reading of a policy that we've revised. Thanks very much to our treasurer and fund reporter for all of their help in making that such a nice looking policy. So basically for that one, it's a new policy for us to define how we actually define the word crowdfunding as a district, and also something that supports and protects our teachers and staff while also making sure that we can actually use these modern ways to fundraise. So that one's for our first reading and presented for our third and final reading, and we're requesting approval tonight on 4 policies: the revised policy 2260, non-discrimination and access to equal education opportunity. This one was last updated in January of 2014, and we're updating language about designating our district compliance officer. So the superintendent will designate one, and our administrative guidelines will define that individual will be Rhonda Porter. Revised policy 2464, gifted education and identification. We're keeping our policy language broad here so that we're in compliance with all of Ohio's rules. Our new policy 8300, continuity of organizational operations plan. Co-op, we learned a different definition for co-op. And this is adding a policy that we actually need a continuity of organizational operation plans. That just outlines the steps that the district would take to restore our critical functions if a threat or crisis happens. And finally, new policy 8305, information security. Again, this is a new one, and this policy creates different classifications of our data and has the superintendent create controls for the data, security, and processes in case there's ever a breach.
Thank you for that. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second on the revised and new policies that Mrs. Lasher just presented. Any comments, questions, or discussion before we vote on final approval? Any comments, questions, or discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Baylor?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
And Mr. President, can I just ask, just going back to the policy under crowdfunding, This policy will spell out what we believe are good ways to generate resources for our teachers that don't put the district in any harm, nor the teacher or any other organization.
Yes, we decided in the policy meeting discussion not to list specific names of crowdfunding options just because they could change tomorrow. But we did outline things that make a good crowdfunding solution for our teachers that would keep them in compliance with our policy, but also the state of Ohio's policy.
There's checks, there'll be checks and balances as well as administrative guidelines that will go with that, will support this policy and any others that may be connected to this policy.
Good question. All right, finance and capital management. Instructional policy and student achievement.
Well, we already gave ours.
Right.
That's true.
We've used our resources.
Any unfinished business or any ad hoc committee reports? Or any unfinished business?
Just, the ad hoc committee for the successful Akron Public School student through the lens of behavior, discipline, and safety will meet again this Friday. The community will meet again this Friday. We took July off. We've got two planning meetings between June and now. We're excited to get going again.
Give a brief update. We met again in July for student engagement. We have another meeting scheduled in late August as well. I would encourage, if any of you can bop into that, I would love to have you have some input. We're getting really close to giving some marching orders and some suggestions on how each school is going to go forward with creating, and there are some board elements to that, so we would love to have your input because there's going to be some work for board members in that. It's not just going to be a student shows up. There will be some mentoring and some pieces in there that we're looking to build in. So I would love to have you at least look at the documents. We'll make sure that those have been shared with you so you can take a look. Right now we're taking questions in that document. So if you can't come to the meeting, you can at least respond in the document so that you can give some input and so we don't end up bringing something to you that you dislike.
Perfect, thank you. Any unfinished business? Under new business, we do have, and it's not on the agenda, but we brought this up previously about having a discussion on disability life insurance, and so I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Pendleton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make the discussion we've had in regards to disability life insurance more formal tonight. And so part of that, I'd like to outline 3 things for you to consider and engage in a discussion and then potentially take action at the next board meeting. One is the history of our offerings in regards to the disability life insurance benefits. 2, the potential actions we've been considering and an outline of the issue at heart that we see today. And then 3 is the timeline. As many of you know, even more so than myself, the district has had an offering, we call it an administrative practice, since prior to 2010, where it offered disability retirees a term life insurance policy. While very well and good intentioned, as you know, term life insurance is for a finite dollar amount, usually for employees. I would say it was governed by collective bargaining agreements and how we offer it now. We have about 3,000 employees who are covered by some type of term life insurance. On this disability life insurance group, which was, the practice was started and ceased prior to 2010, there are approximately 140 policies left on the books. So part of my job, unfortunately, is to identify risk for the board. And we've been studying through Finance Committee, at least for about 3 years, the potential risk. And so I wanted to outline that publicly. For our 140 policies, we are paying approximately $13,000 a month in monthly premiums for those policies. For our 3,000 employees, we're under $12,000 a month. The increased liability as it relates to this disability pool is definitely weighing on the rest of our employees. What does that mean to us? What does it mean long term? It means it may trouble the board when we go secure bids, as we do with all of our insurances, whether it's term life insurance, whether it's medical insurance. And so when we have a vendor that potentially will not award a bid on the rest of our employment, that puts a pretty large risk. Obviously, it's governed by those collective bargaining agreements and what we do for our employees now. So those are items that we will either have to negotiate if we can't secure a bid or self-insure. As you can imagine, I think a couple of you have attended the Finance Committee on these 147 policies, or I'm sorry, 140 policies now. That pull is in excess of $4 million, maybe approaching $5 million. So the last thing that we want to do is put our current employees in jeopardy to where we can't secure a bid. And why we're discussing it now is we're with the vendor Hartford Insurance. That contract ends June 30th of 2019. So we want to put together some action plans for you to consider. So what are those options? Item 2, what are the options that we have been reviewing? We can continue to go to the marketplace to secure bids, do the best that we can with bids, and we will certainly see an increased premium every month. So remember that 140 policies is costing us more than our current 3,000 employees. We've reviewed the potential to sell that book of business at some discount, meaning we get an outside agency to purchase it. We, in a sense, write them a check for somewhere in the neighborhoods of that outstanding liability minus a little discount, and then they work with those disability retirees on a potential buyout plan. That would include quite a bit of premium and a very large check up front. Another option for us to consider is some type of settlement offer that we would propose with a reduced benefit. And then another option, as the board did review, take action on, and then I would say reach compromise in 2010 would be to terminate that plan. So I think we've had lots of detailed discussions in Finance Committee over the years. It's time to bring this to the full board for a vote. The final piece that I had in my notes was the timeline. Bringing it more formal is a necessary component to our discussion. On Thursday, the 16th, I believe, we will have a meeting with all bargaining groups here. On August the 23rd, we'll take any feedback that we received from any bargaining groups to Finance Committee with a final report to the board on the 27th. Did my best to explain the detail there. This is been on the board's table for quite some time, but if you have any questions that you'd like me or Finance Committee to explore, we'd be happy to do so.
Questions? I want to thank Mr. Pendleton for outlining that, so I know we discussed it a little bit, but giving a better presentation so the public will understand, as well as current and previous staff that we had here for Akron Public Schools.
Mr. Pendleton, can you tell, I know the board's discussed this, but can you talk a little bit about how common is carrying insurance like this?
From our research, it's very uncommon. I'll leave that to the legal minds as to our obligations to cover that. That's why we're exploring the potential options in terms of an offer or buyout. We certainly want to be as fair as we possibly can. but realize that there is a lot of employees on the receiving end of our obligations per collective bargaining agreements that we don't want to violate. In our research, we did discuss with an attorney that's out of Ohio who's a specialist in benefits, and in their career they had never seen anything like this.
So we do want to emphasize to the listening public and to our former employees, those who have this particular 140, that to our current employees, this may put them at risk at some point if we don't make one of those choices to be able to right the ship and to get us a good footing, because it's costing us quite a bit and will cost us even more as we go down the line unless we make a decision one way or other in those options that you outlined that would better help all of our employees.
I'd just like to make one comment as somebody who's licensed to sell life insurance in the state of Ohio. I just know for a fact that term life insurance, and I run into this too often, if somebody's seeking term life insurance, but at some point in time, there's no market. It's not meant to be a permanent solution for people. It's the term it's supposed to be for a specific term, but it does get cost prohibitive, and then the market disappears because nobody will write it, even if somebody who's healthy.
Which becomes a problem for us in terms of the liability, because either we have to pick it up or we have to make a choice.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Pendleton? Otherwise, I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it, and I know it's going to be on the Finance Committee agenda. Is that correct?
The 23rd, and I would ask, there's another conflict, the 23rd at 4 p.m. Can we move the Finance Committee to noon on the 23rd? If that's okay, I'll renotice it. We don't have to decide tonight, but it was on my mind, so.
If you want to be part of that discussion, you can.
Yeah,
it's Finance Committee.
Thank you.
All right.
I will.
Thank you, Mr. Pendleton. All right. Is there any other business to come before the board before we...
Any business here?
Yes. Oh, yes, thank you. Sorry, I did not have that.
The President alluded to it earlier, but under new business, we need to talk about an old friend, I guess, for lack of better words. Anybody who's driven up and down West Market Street has seen the Indian sculpture in front of Resnick CLC. It was actually dedicated 33 years ago this month, and it is a wood sculpture. And wood in the outdoors, unless it's a living tree, doesn't last, forever. And we are at a point now with that sculpture that it is becoming a hazard to people who might visit it and go around it. It is not in very good shape. And I don't know when the feathers came off of it, but it came off of it because the sculpture itself couldn't support the feathers anymore on it. I'm not sure exactly when that happened, but it's been gone, the feathers have been gone for a while. And we've been in discussion for about a year, and we've included, Brian, our CFO, has been part of the discussion, myself, Gene Ott has been part of the discussion. There's a little bit of history with Mr. Ott, the wood for that sculpture. Actually, Mr. Ott found the wood in his native Kentucky and brought it here for that sculpture. If anybody knew Mr. Ott, he had an affection for American Indian history. He even has a sculpture of Tecumseh in his front yard as we speak. But we've brought in architects and engineers and other people to take a look at it. And it's just beyond even restoration. And I made some phone calls myself to other communities that have similar statues. I consider this a piece of artwork. I mean, it's one of, and I don't know how many sculptures. This was the 51st in a series of something called the Legends of the Whispering Winds. I think it was called Trail of the Whispering Winds. And there's one of these sculptures in every state, and there's some on foreign soil as well. And they're all getting old, and there's been many that have already sort of disappeared because of weather or whatever. They've been taken down or have fallen. And unfortunately, we're at that point in time where we need to take it down. There's a lot of us hoping it won't be the end of the sculpture. Fortunately, the face has faced the sun, so it's the back of it that's in the worst shape, but there's no guarantee that the front of it will be salvageable when we take it down, but we're hoping for the best, and the people who are taking it down are very cognizant of the fact that we'd like to save it, and we're exploring possible homes for whatever can be salvaged and restored in the future, because once again, it is a piece of artwork. And the one thing about the one here in Akron, the sculptor Peter Toth actually went to Akron Public Schools and was from this area. He now lives in Florida, but he still has family in the area, comes back here, but he's world renowned. The sculptures are inventoried by the Smithsonian Institute. They're just important sculptures in the history, art history and Native American monuments, I guess. So that being said, I believe we do have a a ceremony or a celebration or an event scheduled for this Sunday from 1 to 4 at the sculpture for anybody who wants to come and get some last pictures of it, but it's going to come down fairly quickly because once again it's a danger to the community. So while I'm saying this, if anybody out there thinks of a home for 15 or 16 feet tall face of an Indian sculpture, get in touch with me or somebody. We'd be happy to entertain any ideas from that standpoint. We still have the feathers. So it's going to be stored, once it comes down, it's going to be stored inside with the feathers, and once again, we're going to try to find a home for it. So if anybody's interested, I actually brought copies of the original dedication ceremony brochure that was handed out for anybody who wants to take a look. I brought 4 of them, so you can pass them around.
Looks like the feathers were removed in 2011.
Was it 2011? Okay. So
the feathers themselves are 16 feet tall.
Yeah.
Just the feathers.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the picture on the front, that's probably a good scale of the feathers of the rest of the sculpture. And the last thing I'll say, there's a name Tim Miller in there, and that's not me. So. I don't know who that Tim Miller was that was there that day, but.
Then you need to make sure you're there 33 years later.
Yes. I'll impersonate Tim Miller. Unless we can find that one.
Ginger, there's some old Polaroids too that are going around down at the end.
Thank you for all your research.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Miller, for that, and Mr. Pendleton also for helping to put all of that together. Any other comments or questions or discussion on that? Okay. Hearing none, then pursuant to revised code 121.22G3 to consult with legal counsel to discuss disputes involving the board and or the school district that are the subject of pending or imminent court action. Looking for a motion to recess into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments, questions, or discussion before we vote on recess? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Bravo?
Yes.
Mrs. Lasher?
Yes.
Mrs. Mansfield?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Reverend Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Alexander?
Yes.
Mrs. Bailey?
Yes.